What's up, you guys? Void here, coming back at y'all with another color review for Rivals of Ixalan pre-release. This time we're going to be looking at all the red cards in preparation for pre-release, draft weekend, or just limited in general. We're going to be going over all of the cards, giving you my assessment of what I think is limited playable, what I think is something you should pass on. Let's get it started here with the Elder Dinosaur, the 6/6 for 6 in red. Itali Primal Storm. Whenever it attacks, exile the top card of each player's library. Then you may cast any number of non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs, which isn't too bad. If you can get some good creatures out of the deal, I can imagine having a board presence that's quite scary with a card like this. So this, along with the 6-drop in black, are pretty good options as far as the Elder Dinosaurs go. We have Forerunner of the Empire, the third Forerunner that we have. 1/3 for 4 mana. Not fantastic, but you get to search for a dinosaur card, put it on the top of your library, and whenever a dinosaur enters the battlefield under your control, you can have it deal 1 damage to each creature. So it's an easy way to trigger Enrage, and there are a lot of good cheap creatures, commons, uncommons, that have Enrage triggers that are pretty decent, even if it's just gaining you 2 life, even if it's just dealing 5 damage to a creature. They're pretty good Enrage abilities. Rekindling Phoenix. I'm usually not a fan of these Phoenix creatures. They don't usually do too well in standard, but in limited, flying is good evasion, and evasion usually wins out a lot of games. A 4/3 flyer for 4 mana is good power. When it dies, you get a 0/1 red elemental creature token. At the beginning of your upkeep, you have to sacrifice it, and then you return Rekindling Phoenix from the graveyard to the battlefield, and it gains haste, so you have a way to constantly get it back. Your opponents are going to have to exile it, put something like an arrest effect on it just to stop it. If you have this card, it's likely going to be a deck you build around evasion or just good aggressive creatures, because you also get it back with haste, and that's ideally what red wants to do in its simplest form in limited, is just keep attacking. Brilliant card. Blood Sun is going to be a sideboard card in modern, probably legacy as well, but even in limited I just don't see it too much. There's not really that many good cards. I mean, we do have an Evolving Wilds, but I'm not going to sideboard a Blood Sun just for the 1 Evolving Wilds my opponent might be playing, so that is going to be reserved for other formats probably. Brass's Bounty, kind of useless and limited. 7 mana, each land you control, you get to create a treasure token that can sack and add 1 mana, so it's ideal ramp in Commander, it's ideal ramp in another format where you might want to storm off, but in this format, if you're at 7 mana, you want to spend it on something else, likely one of your bombs, so I don't necessarily know why you would want more mana like this. You're probably not going to get much back anyway for it. Direfleet Daredevil, it's kind of like Snapcaster Mage but for your opponents, and you can't depend on your opponents playing instants and sorcery, so might be a sideboard option at best. But I mean, a 2/1 first strike for 2 isn't terrible as just a creature, and first strike is usually going to beat out a lot of other 2-drops in the format, so it's definitely in consideration. Form of the Dinosaur, 6 mana enchantment, your life total becomes 15, and then each upkeep, it deals 15 damage to a target creature an opponent controls, and then that creature deals damage equal to its power to you, which is quite risky, but I like it as far as removal goes. You don't always get the best removal in red, so I'm not going to complain about it too much. I think it's definitely something. Late game especially, gaining 15 life, it may not seem like a lot, but when you're grinding your opponents down with aggro, having removal like this, it's quite substantial, so I wouldn't sleep on it. Silverclad Ferocidons, 7 mana for an 8/5 with Enrage. This one is fantastic. Whenever it's dealt damage, each opponent sacrifices a permanent, so it's one of those bombs. Your opponent has to deal with it right away as soon as possible. If not, they're going to be sacrificing permanents, creatures, lands. That's usually what you depend on in limited. If you have to sacrifice any or all of those, you're usually going to lose that game. So awesome card, one of the bombs that I would consider in the set. We have Telenali Summoner, 2-drop for a 1/1 with Ascend. Whenever it attacks, you get to pay X and a red. If you do, you create X 1/1 red elemental creature tokens that are tapped and attacking. And at the beginning of the next end step, you exile those tokens unless you have the city's blessing. This is perfect. If you love going the aggro route, or if you just love red in general, this is a card that is perfect for limited. You get more tokens and they're tapped and attacking. Board presence and just good numbers is always good. There's some effects you can pair it up with, giving it more power and toughness. There's that card in white that can give all your creatures +1/+1 until end of turn. If you have the city's blessing, it gives +2/+2 until end of turn. That's a card to pair it with. Pretty decent 2-drop because it gives you more tokens. You know, Shake the Foundations, 3 mana instant, deals 1 damage to each creature without flying, and then you draw a card. On an instant, it's not that bad, but you have to probably play a lot of enraged trigger creatures that do something amazing when they're dealt damage. That would justify dealing 1 damage to each creature. It's going to get rid of some tiny little tokens your opponents have, but other than that, you can't expect it to do much to your opponent's creatures. It's mainly in here to trigger enrage. That's why it has the gigantic dinosaur in the artwork. But the card draw is also worth considering as a filler. Needletooth Raptor is one of my favorite cards in the set. 4 mana for a 2/2 with Enrage. Whenever it's dealt damage, it deals 5 damage to target creature an opponent controls. So right off the bat, you can get rid of their best creature because a lot of good creatures in the set are going to be within that 5 damage. And it's on an Enrage trigger, so if they block it, they're giving up their best creature likely. So they're likely never going to block it. So they're probably not going to block it. So you can also sit back on it. It's perfect that way. Or you can use cards like Shake the Foundations and deal 1 damage to each creature without flying. Hey, there's an idea. And there's also some other cards that deal damage to creatures, but they just deal 1 damage that you can take advantage from as far as Ixalan the set goes. So there's some synergies there. I think it's pretty good. Then we have Sea Red, 2 mana aura. Awesome auras in this set, guys. Enchanted creature gets +2/+1 and has first strike. Are you kidding me? That's awesome. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't attack with a creature this turn, sacrifice it. Okay, I'm gonna attack every single turn because that's an insane enchantment. +2/+1 and first strike. You're likely gonna have the best creature on the board, so why aren't you going to be attacking each turn? There's no reason to sacrifice it. Brilliant. Reckless Rage, 1 mana instant, deals 4 damage to target creature you don't control and 2 damage to target creature you do control. So again, there are some good enraged triggers. Unfortunately, the Needletooth Raptor, it is just 2 toughness, so it doesn't work well with that card, but it does work well with a lot of the other enraged trigger dinos. And dealing 4 damage to a target creature you don't control for 1 red is pretty good, even if you have to deal 2 damage to something that may not survive on your board. Probably one of the better removal spells in the set. Then we have Charging Tuscadon, 5 mana for 4/4 with Trample. Whenever it would deal damage to a player, it deals double that damage to that player instead. Oh boy, this is great. 4/4 Trample, good way of getting over your opponent's creatures. And then when it does, you deal double that damage. That's ridiculous. You talk about like all the enchantments that can give it more power, and you're going to be dealing double that damage. Your opponents are going to be forced to block with everything they have just to not take that trample damage, because even a couple damage is going to turn to 4 damage. It's insane. Then we have Stormfleet Swashbuckler, 2 mana for a 2/2 with Ascend. When you have the City's Blessing, it has double strike. So 2/2 double strike late game for 2 mana. That's pretty amazing. Awesome 2 drops in red. Then we have another good 1-drop, one of the other awesome 1-drops in the set. Daring Buccaneer, 1 mana for a 2/2. Additional cost to cast it is reveal a pirate card or pay 2 mana. Like a lot of the other tribal-based cards, you have to reveal another pirate, or you have to pay more mana, effectively making it useless. I mean, a 2/2 for 3 mana is not useless entirely, but it's pretty bad compared to 1 mana for 2/2. Getting off to that early start, it's kind of like a Goblin Guide without the haste, but still amazing. Pirates Pillage, 4 mana sorcery. Additional cost to cast it, you have to discard a card, draw 2 cards, and create 2 colorless treasure artifact tokens. Pretty good card draw, pretty good ramp. Discarding a card is bad, but oh well, you get 2 cards back for it, and you get 2 more mana to work with. Goblin Trailblazer, one of my favorite 2-drops in the entire set, and it's a great reason to play red. A 2/1 menace for 2 mana. That early in the game, having menace, a lot of your opponent's creatures are just not going to be able to block that. And even if they do double block it, it's a 2/1 that's likely going to kill something off. It's a good creature to throw some enchantments on earlier in the game too. Just amazing. If you want to go aggressive, you want to go evasion, it's also good. Can't really beat this type of card. You have Brazen Freebooter, 4 mana for 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, you get a treasure artifact token. Good power and toughness for 4 mana, and you get mana for it. Can't really complain. Decent filler. Then we have Bombard, 3 mana instant, deals 4 damage to target creature. However you get your removal, it's usually going to be good. It's not going to deal with everything in the set, but it is instant speed, 3 mana, deal 4 damage to something. If you have to settle, again guys, settle on removal. Then we have Shatter, good sideboard stuff. I mean, it's been reprinted a bunch of times. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any good artifacts that are worth sideboarding in something like this, so probably a pass. Orazka Raptor, 4 mana for a 3/4 with no keywords, pretty vanilla. But again, usually these type of creatures are okay fillers. Then we have another amazing aura, 2 mana Tilanali's Crown. Deals 1 damage to the enchanted creature when it enters the battlefield, so it's going to trigger Enrage. We know that already because it's Tillinolly's crown. You see the dinosaur in the artwork. You know it was meant to do that. And the enchanted creature gets +3/+0 and has trample. So that's already insane. Giving it trample and more power is exactly what you want in a creature heavy deck. Stampeding Horncrest 5 mana for a 4/4 that has haste as long as you control another dinosaur. That's brilliant. It has a reasonable drawback to where you have to play other dinosaurs in order to get its maximum effectiveness. But even if you don't, it's still a 4/4 for 5, which isn't terrible by any means. But you should probably be considering Dino Tribal if you're going to go that route. Buccaneer's Bravado, 2 mana for an instant. Target creature gets +1/+1 against first strike until end of turn. Target pirate gets +1/+1 against double strike until end of turn. So if you're playing pirates, you get more of the benefit. If you're not playing pirates, it's still worth it because it's +1/+1 and first strike. It's not a sure strike by any means. That's a lot better. But if you have a pirate, giving double strike, pair it up with something with good evasion, and you have more damage being dealt. And there is a way that you can make a good Izzet colored evasion based deck in the format. Fanatical Firebrand, little 1 mana 1/1 with haste. You can tap it to sacrifice it. It deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So we've seen this card before, but it's just insane that it's gonna do a lot more than what those cards used to do. I can't think of their names right off the top of my head, but they also have a haste 1/1 for 1 red, and there's also another goblin that can sacrifice itself to deal 1 damage. So getting that, making a super aggressive deck, pairing it up with a dodo bird that's a 2/1 with haste for 2 mana, that's not a bad way to go. Going aggro, just make sure that you keep the pressure on and you should be fine. Then we have Frilled Death Spitter, 3 mana for a 3/2 with Enrage. Whenever it's dealt damage, it deals 2 damage to target opponent. Pretty decent Enrage trigger, and you get decent power for the mana. Attack with it, your opponents aren't necessarily going to rush to block it. Kind of like Afflict from Hour of Devastation. Then we have Mutiny, 1 red mana, target creature an opponent controls, deals damage equal to its power to another target creature that player controls. So getting rid of their weakest creature is not necessarily a good thing, but if you are desperate for removal, it's there. Not going to rush to play it over better removal. Sun-Collared Raptor is an awesome 2-drop. 2 mana for a 1/2 with trample, so right off the bat, it's not fantastic, but it has an activated ability of 3 mana. Sun-Collared Raptor gets +3/+0 until end of turn. With trample, it then has 4 power. So all that on a 2-drop. I love swinging in with these first, forcing our opponents to make that uncomfortable decision whether or not to block it. Because if you chump it, I'm just going to trample over you. If you block it with a bigger creature, I'm just going to pump it up and kill it probably. So I love the versatility in these 2-drops. Swaggering Corsair, 3 mana for a 2/2 that enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter if you attack with a creature this turn. I'm not a big fan of it, but if you have to fill in with a creature like this, you're likely going to be attacking with creatures anyway before you cast a lot of your spells main phase 2. It's probably going to be a 3/3 for 3 mana with no other abilities. If you're okay with that, it's not the worst thing in the world. So anyway guys, that's going to wrap it up for Red Rivals of Ixalan. Hopefully this was good for preparation for pre-release weekend, draft weekend. You guys check out my other videos if you want to see the other colors for pre-release. But anyway, you guys have a wonderful day. Void here signing off.